Okay, so we have a right triangle. We know that the 90-degree angle is formed by the two legs. And the opposite side to that 90-degree angle, right angle, is the hypotenuse. So today we're going to learn trigonometric ratios. So let's call B an angle formed by the hypotenuse and one of the legs. We're going to call that leg the adjacent leg to the angle, and the other side of the angle we're going to call it is formed by the hypotenuse. The opposite leg to that angle, we're going to call it opposite. Okay, so there are very interesting ratios. We're going to be color coding. We're going to color code the opposite angle, the opposite side, yellow. We're going to color code the hypotenuse blue and the adjacent side red. Okay, so there are ratios and relationships in this right triangle. So the first relationship, the first ratio is called sine. The sine is equals the sine of the angle B equals opposite side over hypotenuse. Then we have cosine of angle B equals adjacent over hypotenuse, and then we have tangent equals opposite over adjacent. Okay, so we're going to be color coding everything that is adjacent. We're going to color it red. Everything that is hypotenuse, we're going to color code it blue, and everything that is opposite, we're going to color code it yellow. So we're going to use something to remember this relationship. We're going to call it SohCahToa. So now we can see with the color coding what each letter represents on the triangle. So now we have a problem. We're going to see how to utilize these ratios. So we have an angle. We have the hypotenuse, and we have the opposite side to that angle. This we're going to call it X. So this is the angle. So the opposite leg to that angle, we're going to call it O. And of course, the 5 is the hypotenuse. We're going to label it. Okay, so if we go back to our relationships, we can see that the relationship between opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So sine equals opposite of a hypotenuse. Now I'm going to set up my ratio. Sine of 50 degrees equals x over 5. Okay, sine of 15 degrees equals x opposite over hypotenuse, which is 5. So how do you solve for x? You need to multiply both sides by 5, and then you can put that in the calculator. 5 times sine of 15 degrees equals 1.29. We can see that in order to check my work, I can see that the leg, I found the leg, so, and the leg is less than the hypotenuse. That's one way to see if my answer is reasonable. Okay, let's see another example. We have a right triangle. we have an angle 63 degrees, and we have one leg, and we need to find the hypotenuse. Okay, so what ratio should I use? Well, we have to label, right? The angle is 60 degrees, and the leg, the relationship between that leg with respect to the angle is opposite, and we have the hypotenuse. So that means we need to use sine again. So sine of an angle equals opposite over adjacent. So then I need to set up my sine ratios. Sine of 60 degrees equals 5 over x. Okay, so how do I solve for x? I can cross multiply. X times sine of 63 equals 5. And then how do I solve for x? I need to divide by both sides by sine of 63 degrees. Okay, this is the answer that I got, and I want you to check if that is if the answer is feasible. So x represents the hypotenuse, and we know that one leg is 5. Of course, there is a error. That cannot be correct. The hypotenuse is the longest side, so it should be higher than 5. So I made a mistake. So I need to go back and check my work. Probably I didn't put it correctly in my calculator, and I got the right answer. I went back and I did 5 divided by sine of 63, and I got the correct answer. So I'm going to correct it. The answer, the hypotenuse, should have been 5.61. Okay, so now we have another problem. So we have a right triangle, we have an angle 35 degrees, we have one leg 7, and we have another leg that is missing. Okay, so what is the relationship between the 7 with respect to the 35? It's opposite, and we know that the x is the adjacent leg. Okay, so that means that I can use tangent of an angle equals opposite over adjacent. Okay, so I need to set up my ratio. Tangent of 35 degrees equals 7 over x. So how do you solve for x? I need to cross multiply. X times tangent of 35 degrees equals 7. So how do I solve for x? I need to divide by tangent of 35 degrees. So I put that in the calculator, and my answer is going to be x equals 10. Okay, so here I have another problem. Last problem. I have a right triangle. I have an angle 23, and I have one leg forming that angle, and I have the hypotenuse. So what's the relationship between that leg with respect to that angle? Yes, it's adjacent, but you are correct. The hypotenuse. So what ratio can I use? Adjacent and hypotenuse. I can use cosine. Cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So I need to set up my cosine ratio. Cosine of 23 degrees equals x over 25. So solving my algebra, how do I solve for x? I need to get rid of the 25. I need to multiply by 25 on both sides. So I put that in the calculator. 25 times cosine of 23 degrees. So the answer is going to be 23.01. So is the answer reasonable? Well, 23 is the measurement of the leg. Yes, that's correct because it's less than the hypotenuse. So my answer is correct.